I broke my back.
What do you mean by that?
My back is broken.
What do you mean, calm it down? It's a fight. Referees telling two fighters who want to fight to calm it down. He should calm down.
I saw he's like a clown in his show, man. He's not your guy.
Because Tyson Fury's back, and all you motherfuckers are under attack.
Look, Eddie Hearn can say all what he likes. Who gives a shit what Eddie Hearn says? It's garbage.
Are you off your tits? Have you been smoking something?
Can you let me retire and be happy? Please? Just please.
Bombs away from the Bronx Bomber!
Wanda! Let's go, baby! Let's go!
I'm through. They put somebody else up and give me an interview.
What are you talking about? What are you talking about?
You never give me a fair shake. HBO needs to fire you. You don't know shit about boxing. You ain't shit. You not shit.
I wish I was 50 years younger and I'd kick your ass.
I got dropped, man.
Are you kidding me?
No, you won the fight.
OMG. I am so excited.
Any of you radio personalities think you want smoke? Call me Mr. Chimney. I want smoke.
Yes. What is up? What is up, MCR family? Merry Christmas Eve for everyone in the UK that's listening, which is a lot of you. Obviously, in about 28 minutes, it's going to be Christmas. So, obviously, Merry Christmas to you guys out there. Happy holidays. For guys in a Christmas Eve show, MCR working hard. Always. You know how it is.
I said it last year.
Come on.
When I heard you to take part.
Come on. You know how it is. And obviously, me and Rob only discussed the Whyte. We only did a Dylan Whyte, Chisora 2 live fight chat media reaction show. And there was a ton of other fights that happened on Saturday that we need to discuss. So obviously, smash the like button, share the show, subscribe. I'm Matt, the Hipster Hunter. Guys, it's going to be a good one. Call in 323-870-4051. Press 1 to get in the queue. If you are international, email me, mixedcommentradio@gmail.com to get a free international and permanent call-in link. I'll be honest, I really should have had like some Christmas sound bites in order, and I could have easily got some, but I really didn't think about it, and so just shots at me because I could have had that a little bit better prepared. But anyways, digressing. Obviously, we're going to break down and cover most of the fights that happened on Saturday. Obviously, the PBC on Fox debut of their deal with the Charlo brother doubleheader with Dominic Brazil versus Carlos Negron, and boy, that card did not go as planned. Damn. Obviously, on top of that, ESPN Plus and BT Sports box office had Frampton versus Josh Warrington in a great fight. That was arguably the best fight of the weekend. In a fight that I just want to say that I was right. I picked Josh Warrington to win. Robbie Hearns, our co-host, did not. Just saying. Shout out to everyone in the chat. Unemployed, Mari Yamasaki, Fugadi, Hassan saying, I told you Frampton a shot. I'm pretty sure you're talking to Rob about that one. Gary from Dallas, Real Niger, pound for pound supporter right there. PSK, and I think Rob was here somewhere. I see Jose from Canada on the line. Jose, press 1 at any point when you want to jump in and have your call. Obviously, I'm going to break down the fights. And again, at any point, Jose, press 1. I'll see it, and I'll jump over to you. There's no set time that I'll go to callers. And also, Jose, since I know this is going to be your first time calling in, you also don't need to just talk about the fights if you want to talk about other stuff. This is MCR. It's not, another channel, another show. It's a little more laid back here, just saying. But before that, we're going to quickly preview MCR's 2018 Boxing Awards show. Yes, that's right. Hold on, let me get this out. Yes, it's here, ladies and gentlemen. It's the end of the year. You know what that means? A ton of lists, tons of top 10s, top 5s, all that stuff. But we did a little bit better this year, I think. I think this year you guys are going to really like it. Because not only are we going to have a end-of-the-year award show next week, but you listening, everyone out there listening right now, can actively partake in who wins these awards. We are currently have a week's poll /vote on patreon.com/mixcombatradio. And that all those polls are absolutely free, so you don't need to be a Patreon member to go participate in those polls. So anyone out there listening, Hassan, Mario Yamasaki, PSK, people that I know that aren't patrons that are, habitual listeners to the show, go and participate in these polls. And again, patreon.com/mix combat radio. The link's down below in the description. But we're going to run through the options, the nominees, the awards, who are up for them, and again, how you can vote on it. And I got to say, it's turning out to be a good sort of award season. When we had a select committee come up with the nominations, and that was tough. Like, there was some, like the prospect of the year. There were some prospects that didn't make the list that I know have pissed off some people, and I just hope that, again, always leave down a comment below how pissed off you are, but these are the nominees, and I hope you enjoy this vote as much as I do. And again, patreon.com/Mix Combat Radio. Let's move down. The first award, Boxing KO of the Year. The nominees, Dylan Whyte versus Lucas Brown, Alexander Povetkin versus David Price, Jamal Charlo versus Hugo Centeno Jr., Danny Garcia versus Brandon Rios, Deontay Wilder versus Luis Ortiz, Terrence Crawford versus Jose Benavidez, Derek Chisora versus Carlos Takam, Alexander Vajdic versus Tony Bellew, Derek Chisora versus Dylan Whyte 2, and Edelio Alvarez versus Sergey Kovalev 2. Again, for Boxing KO of the Year, go and vote. Boxing Prospect of the Year, Devin Haney versus Devin Haney, Teofimo Lopez, Daniel Dubois, Chris Colbert, a.k.a. Lil B-Hop, Shakur Stevenson, Michael Conlon, Josh Kelly, Anthony Yard, Anthony Fowler, and F.A. Agabi. Boxing Story of the Year, only 5 nominees for this one. HBO ends their boxing programming. DAZN, ESPN Plus, and the rise of streaming. VADA, PD regulation, and the curious case of Canelo Alvarez. PBC on Fox deal, and obviously the Tyson Fury comeback. Go and vote on that one. Boxer of the Year, Alexander Usyk, Jaime Munguia, Mikey Garcia, Maurice Hooker, Terrence Crawford, Josh Warrington, Edelio Alvarez, Vasily Lomachenko, Alexander Vajdic, and Anthony Joshua. And last category, Boxing Fight of the Year, Koze Tanaka versus Sho Kimura, which I got to admit, that is 100% my personal favorite. And even though I know that probably will not get it, which is a damn shame because everyone's out there casuals, that is by far the best fight of the year. Just throwing that out there. Ezelani Laura versus Jared Hurd, Marit Garcia versus Yonera Dorticos, Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury, Alex Aicedo versus Lenny Zappavina, Derek Chisora versus Carlos Takam, Jesse Magdaleno versus Isaac Dogbe, Oscar Valdez versus Scott Quigg, Sirikat Sorungsvia versus Juan Francisco Estrada, and Deontay Wilder versus Luis Ortiz. Like I said, go and vote right now. You only have a week's left of time to go and vote. Go do it. Award show is next week. We do not have a set time for it, but again, go and vote. It's absolutely free to participate, and it's fun. How many other outlets can you actually participate in the awards, and what accolades they give out? Very few. I think MCR is one of the few that's really this extensive, let's be honest. But digressing from all of that, let's head into the fights of the weekend and break them down. And let's head straight over to PBC on Fox, the air quotes first one with the Charlo doubleheader. Oh, man. I think a lot of people have a wide range of opinions about both these fights. I think, obviously, just with how they both turned out, they can sort of be thrown together in terms of the stories we can take from the fight, the big narratives we can take from both fighters and the matchups that we've seen. Both Charlos, from what we saw, were hesitant, lacked any sort of urgency or sense of urgency. Were headhunting consistently. Were chasing their opponents. The list can really go on and on with how much their performances were flat. Both of them. Obviously, Jamal Charlo narrowly won his, even though the scorecards were grossly wide. That 119 scorecard for Jamal Charlo is just a flat-out disgusting scorecard. Shout out to Larry Hazard Jr. Jamal Charlo obviously lost his title versus Tony Harrison in a controversial decision. I scored it for both Charlos, to be honest. However, there is clear issues with both guys right now in their sort of boxing ability. I would say we have seen a stagnation in their ability. If you go back, and just in terms of boxing selection, technique, footwork, head movement, like they have looked relatively the same for some time now. I think that's an issue because they've always lacked, in my sense, some fluidity, especially when it comes to transitioning their game from offense to defense, to chasing their opponent, to cutting off the ring. Like they have a hard time switching between those things. And that's why a guy like Tony Harrison, who's a little more fluid than a Jamal Charlo, is able to switch from offense to defense, from the back foot to the front foot, a little bit more effortlessly. Matt Korobov, for example, his footwork was fantastic. His head movement was on point. While both Jamal and Jamel were, a little bit static in their approach. And again, there was just no sense of urgency. Like the volume output from both of them was quite low. And the fights overall were just not that exciting. I think that's the consensus at least, is that the fights themselves were a little bit anticlimactic. Props to obviously Tony Harrison and Matt Korobov for showing up. They played spoiler. Tony Harrison more so than obviously Korobov by winning the fight in a huge upset. But I think, to be honest, this is more so on the Charlos not progressing as fighters. Their games have become predictable. And we have assumed that the versions we've seen, these very predictable versions that have been destroying subpar competition, can do that to higher level competition. And even though Matt Korobov and Tony Harrison are not respectively the elite of the division. Tony Harrison, though, obviously more so than Korobov, in my opinion. However, they are at least a step above their recent opponents. Jamal Charlo versus Hugo Centeno Jr. Hugo Centeno Jr. is nothing compared to Matt Korobov. Korobov at least has a win over Jose Uzcategui, who's a current champion at a different weight class. On top of that, Jamel has sort of feasted on lower level opponents for some time now. Erickson Lubin, even though he was a highly touted prospect, he was completely unproven. And that's, first round knockout we got really hyped on, but we didn't see any progression in his game. And now we've seen a 12-round fight with somebody that is better than Lubin, way more tested, way more proven than Lubin. And we see the limits of his game, the limits of his style. And I don't know how, or I should say, I don't know if their current situations, trainer-wise, is the right place. Derek James, all the credit in the world to him. I think he's a fantastic trainer. But he doesn't teach a different style than what we see from a Spence, from a Jamel. Now, with Jamal, I mean, both brothers, to be honest, they trained with Ronnie Shields for some time. They trained with Laura for some time. They should be a little bit better when it comes to chasing guys that are fantastic, defensive-minded back foot boxers. And they just seemed out of water, out of depth last Saturday. It was odd. It was definitely, like I said, flat performances from both. PSK saying at MCR, you think the Charlo's inside work lacks severely? No, not so. I think they did their best work when they were inside throwing combinations. It's just they were never really there throughout the fight. But I see Jose pressed once. We're going to go out to Jose, who I assume wants to talk about the Charlos and say some witty one-liners while hating on them. Jose, how are you doing?
Hello, Matteo.
Well, first off,
congratulations.
First off, congratulations to you for calling in, man.
Yeah.
I appreciate it, man.
Hey, man, you know what? I got to spread the love around, man. I can't just be a one-show guy, man. I got fans on all different platforms. I'm one of the true guys. I go on PBC. I'll go on DAZN, ESPN, Golden Boy. I'm everywhere, man.
Oh, we know. Anyways.
So
Jose.
unlike what you think, I'm not calling a hate on the Charlos, man. I actually enjoy watching the Charlos. They're the boxers and the characters that make boxing entertaining, man. And this is what bothers me about boxing, that we have to watch these fights. These fringe contenders fight against true champions, and every once in a while it happens, man. These guys, they don't pay attention, they don't focus as they should, and they end up losing. And all this does is it just slows shit down, man. It derails the Hurd fight, It derails other competition that Charlo should be fighting. And now he's got to rematch this guy, and next time he fights him, he's going to starch him, and he's going to beat his ass. But in the meantime, we've lost 8 months to a year.
Yeah.
And it just frustrates me because I don't know why, these fights even have to happen in boxing, man. The only reason we watch these fights, at least myself, is not to cheer for the underdog, man. That's the last thing I want. It's the absolute last thing. Just like when Maestro fought Danny Garcia, I was totally happy that Garcia won, right? Even if it's close, give it to the champ, not to the chump, because them winning does nothing for boxing whatsoever. It's just like when Truax won. He ended up winning, and what did that do, man? He went and he lost his next fight when he defended again, right? So, I mean, what's the point, And that's what pisses me off, and that's what frustrates me, right? I mean, and being these young, hungry champs that they are, it's hard for them to focus and really realize that, they do have to take shit serious. And every once in a while, lightning strikes and these bums end up winning. And I just don't see how it makes the rematch exciting. I don't see how it makes anything exciting, right? If anything, now we've lost the mystique behind two 0-0 fighters going at it between Hurd and Charlo, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, just disappointing, man. Disappointing all around. That's my thought on it. Don't know what you think about that.
No, I definitely agree, especially the sentiment of I think most people the underdog story is great. I think everyone can sort of relate to that. But what we really want to see is utter greatness. We want to see Ali's. We want to see Sugar Ray Leonard's. We want to see Mike Tyson in his prime. We want to see greatness personified when it comes to athletics. And like you said, it's kind of unfortunate now that Tony Harrison won this fight off a very controversial decision. And we've lost that mystique about Charlo versus Hurd. When a week ago, that was, I think, on every hardcore's mind, the fight they wanted to see next year, or at least one of the fights they wanted to see next year. And now, like you said, we have to wait 8 months to a year for that to even be back into the equation, because Charlo's going to have to get a tune-up or get an instant rematch and go through this process again. And then let alone what Hurd's going to have to do, let alone whether injuries happen. This unfortunately is the game.
Yeah, and there's a case to be made that, that Hurd would be better off giving a rematch to Lara than he would to Charlo, because now Charlo's got to win the belt back, and then he's got to fight maybe somebody else again. So, I mean, it's just frustrating, right? And that's why we've got to avoid these fights altogether. And as fans, we can't let this shit happen, man. Same thing if AJ ends up fighting the other guy, the other bum, Dylan Whyte. And what if Dylan Whyte beats him? Obviously, we know Dylan Whyte's not at that level, but it can happen, man. It's like one of those Oliver McCall fights all over again, where the lesser opponent ends up winning, and it's just frustrating, man, all around. So, I mean, like you just said right now, one of the top fights we wanted to see in 2019 is now completely off the table, right? So, don't know what's going to happen now. hopefully Charlo can build back up again and just use his talk to be able to just blow past this guy and just force that fight to happen. But it'll be harder than just saying it, right? Because we know what boxing's like, right? There's politics behind it, and there's a certain chain of command and the ladder that you have to follow. And now he's just completely fallen down from the ladder, right? So now we've got to see him go up again. And they're not young men either. They're already 28 years old, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's one of the things we have to realize. When you're talking prospects, you're talking Mickey Conlan. He's a prospect of the year at 28 years old. Look how old Canelo is, and look what he's accomplished at that age. So, not every boxer gets out of the gate that quick. And, time is definitely not on their side in terms of where they are in their career right now, considering that he just suffered this catastrophic loss, man. That's how I see it. It's a huge loss. This is a guy that was maybe potentially building towards being a pay-per-view star. Not anytime soon, but still his trajectory to be a pay-per-view star was maybe even 2 to 3 years down the road. Now, what's this done? That's derailed that even further, probably completely eliminating him from even being able to be one, right?
Agreed. And whatever momentum they had as, quote unquote stars heading into this event, that's plummeting, right? The momentum's completely gone and going the opposite way. Train is rolling downhill. Neither fight was good. One of them lost. On top of that, the viewership was mediocre at 1.6 million viewers average. I'm not saying you hit the reset button if you're PBC, but I don't know what you do. They're definitely going to have to go back to the drawing board in some fashion and figure out what to do next. What's the next move for both guys? Because this was just a complete failure, to be honest, of an event.
Yeah, and it's different if you get knocked out and you lose, because then you can even build back a story and it's somewhat entertaining because you're even holy shit, the no-namer actually did it. But in this case, this guy just basically fought a boring fight. So really, there's nothing to really look forward to. And I know people say Harrison isn't a total unknown, and that's maybe the case. But let's keep it real, man. If we're the same people calling out, Joshua for fighting people that aren't at his level, we also have to be the same people that understand that Harrison is not that guy. He's not a champion, or he shouldn't be a champion. He's just not that type of fighter that carries that sort of clout. And it's just disappointing, man. But I mean, good for him, I guess.
Agreed.
You know what they say, right? The sun shines even on a dog's ass, right? So I guess that's the case for that bum, But I don't know, man. That's just my frustration out of that. Then I don't know. And then we could talk about Chisora and Whyte. Again, I don't understand that matchup. I don't understand what Josh was doing there at the fight. And what frustrates me is he's like, hey, you fans want to see this? He's asking them. Those fans went to go see that fight. Of course they think highly of Chisora and Whyte. It'd be different if he put it on Twitter or put it on a forum open to everybody. But he's there at that fight. So what are people going to – they're not going to boo him. They obviously went there to cheer on Whyte to begin with. So, I mean, now we're going to see that fight. And, again, it's just putting off the inevitable or putting off what we want to see. I would love to see Joshua really be tested. That's my thing. I don't think he's really been tested. I think he's fought Klitschko, who was coming off a bunch of particular personal issues that he had, and we don't know at what level Klitschko was at. And I would like to see Joshua fight, an Ortiz or fight a Big Baby Miller, just to be able to see that he's truly on the upper level of where he should be. Because that's what we should want. Instead, he's going to be fighting Dillian Whyte because Wilder's going to fight Fury, right? He seems like he's more a man of principle, and he also seems that from what Wilder is saying, I think Wilder wants 50-50, and I think Wilder's going to take that position and stick to it. So I mean, and there's fights for Wilder to have, obviously he's I think he rejected $25 million. Is that correct?
I don't remember that exactly.
But regardless, like, you would think that's life-changing money for him. But I mean, if he's already going to be making 10, 12 million, you know, he could still make 10, 12 million on pretty much any fight he does going forward. You know, so I mean, he could fight Ortiz again, get a rematch. You know, he could fight Fury again, get the rematch there. You know, he could fight Big Baby Miller. So I mean, these are potentially 3 fights where he could still probably make $50 million in those 3 fights. So I mean, does he really need to fight Joshua? You know, maybe he could get a bigger paycheck, but I mean, ultimately, if he wants to stick to what he thinks is right, and we all seen from what he does online that he's kind of a crazy cat, right? So I mean, it wouldn't surprise me at all if he doesn't budge off that 50-50 that he's probably going to look for going forward, right? So I don't know. It just, again, another division that's going to be at a stalemate, right? So.
Yeah, but I mean, even in the stalemate, let's say we get Wilder Fury the rematch, we get AJ versus Whyte the rematch, and we get Big Baby versus Luis Ortiz. I'm completely okay with all of those fights. Like, those are all exciting fights that I'll get hyped for.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Not as much the Whyte versus the Joshua, but I mean, at least they're good heavyweights. You know.
Yeah, like that. Those are all the best heavyweights in the division fighting. So I'm okay with that. Like. There's a unspoken of like round robin tournament going on right now. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I guess I'd like to see like Whyte get dispatched right away from that group, but I mean, fair enough. Like, let him hang out there. He is the 6th guy, but he should be, you know,
come on,
the
fam,
top guys.
fam.
You know,
do you really rate Miller over Whyte?
The problem is it's hard to know how good Miller is because, I mean, he hasn't really fought anybody.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's the problem. But he seems to pass the eye test. He's big. He's strong. He's super active. You know, and he just seems like a matchup that would just be a nightmare. He seems like a Sean Porter, but just in heavyweight. You know, like a Hurd, but in heavyweight.
So do you pick Big Baby over Whyte in a fight, like a hypothetical fight?
Oh yeah, easy.
Okay.
Well, I happen to think personally that of the heavyweights, the best heavyweight is Ortiz. That to me is the best one. He's number 1. Even though he lost to Wilder, I think in a rematch he beats Wilder. I think he's just tricky. He's a proper boxer. You know, he's southpaw. He's got power. You know, I think he's the toughest one of them all to fight, and I think that's why people avoid him. And you know, I would love to see Ortiz versus Joshua. I think he beats him.
Oh yeah.
You know,
I don't know about that.
I think he just has to. Well, he did well against Joshua. I mean, against Wilder.
Yeah, but Wilder and Joshua fight completely different.
Yeah, but I mean, still though, man, he got in there. He caught him like nobody else did, right?
I'm not saying Ortiz is bad. No, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying Ortiz is bad, but he clearly has not done anything to say or to prove that he is the number 1 heavyweight in the world. He just hasn't.
He had Wilder beat.
But he didn't. He got knocked out.
10,
do you want me to share the picture of him on the floor?
No, I hear you. But just like how people argue that 9 out of 10 refs would have stopped the Wilder versus Fury fight
but they didn't.
Count. 9 out of 10. I realize that, but 9 out of 10 refs would have stopped that fight too. He was punishing Wilder. That could have easily have been a stoppage, and it wasn't. Right? I mean, again, to that point, maybe he blew his gas tank and he just went too far, too quick, to just was inexperienced in that moment, right? With all the things that he'd had, you'd think he would have been able to just be a little bit more calm and just put him away. But obviously, you know, coulda, shoulda, you know, didn't is what ultimately happened. But I believe that Ortiz will be back, and I think he deserves to be there. And it's a toss up right now with those 4 guys. We don't really know, right? Or those 5 guys, I should say, because Miller is also unknown, and he could. Would you be surprised if Miller beat Wilder?
Surprised, no, but I wouldn't think he would. Like, you know what I mean?
Okay, but not surprised. Again, like Miller has attributes that are pretty difficult to handle in a boxing match, right?
Well, it's like I'll bring it back to Luis Ortiz, who you mentioned. Like I can see and envision Luis Ortiz beating Wilder in a rematch or beating AJ. I can envision that, but he hasn't done it. So until he does, I can't say he's the number one guy in the division. Until Big Baby shows us that he is up there with the AJs and the Tysons and the Wilders, I can't say he is there yet. I would say a couple guys are above him, like a Ortiz, like a Whyte, even a Povetkin, arguably. Like, Big Baby needs to prove some stuff first. Like, let him prove things before throwing him in there at the very, very top. We have a long history of that being a disservice to the fighter.
But again, if we would have had Whyte fight somebody else, we could have really seen if Whyte is good or not. You know what I mean? Had Whyte said, I'm going to fight Big Baby, or I'm going to fight Ortiz, or I'm going to fight, Fury, or I'm going to fight Wilder, we'd have a better idea of how good Whyte is. Like, in my opinion, Whyte is the sixth man out. The other five are actually in that level. The other five are like a Bull, Holyfield, Lewis, Tyson. Like, they're all equally dangerous, and any of them can lose any given night against each other. That's how good they all are. But, I see Dylan Whyte as like a rockman, like he can win maybe one fight by fluke, but ultimately he'll get outclassed, right?
What are the wins that are equal to a Joseph Parker and Derek Chisora win for a Big Baby Miller?
For who?
For Big Baby.
No, Big Baby. Yeah, Big Baby doesn't have him, right? Big Baby.
What about Ortiz?
He beat Adamic. It looked like it was.
What about Ortiz?
Ortiz. Well, he fucking just crushed Jennings, right?
Yep, that's
Jennings
one.
Jennings isn't a guy that most people just kill, right?
Yep.
He crushed Jennings.
A guy that Derek Chisora brought in for sparring. Just want to put that out there.
Yeah, but then again, Klitschko went 12 rounds with him too, right? You could kind of go on the resumes. I just, from when Ortiz was going into the ring, he was starching people. He was knocking them out, right? So, and he did that against Wilder, right? He did what nobody else has done to Wilder.
No, what do you mean?
Wilder looked that vulnerable.
What do you mean? There's been 39 other guys that have been knocked out by Wilder. He's one of them.
No. I meant to say he made Wilder look vulnerable. Right? No one else has put hands on Wilder like he did.
What do you mean? Wilder's had hands put on him throughout his title reign. What are we talking about here?
Like who? Who put him on Queer Street like that, man? Who had
Melina clipped him. Fucking Areola clipped him a couple times. Spielka clipped him a bunch. Duhapis gave him that work. Wilder's struggled with every single guy he's faced, even if he's knocked him out.
Never like that. Never like being on pretty much.
You may be right about that, but guess what happened? Wilder survived and knocked him out 2 rounds later. But anyways, Jose, let's wrap this up because we do have more callers. Final thoughts. Wrap it up, Jose.
Final thoughts, man. Again, what an amazing year for boxing, man. Again, you know what? My goal for 2019, I was just looking at the schedule. My ultimate goal for next year is I want to go like January to December. I want to make one live fight every month, man. That's the dream. I'm going to make it happen. I'm going to start off with Broner Pacquiao. From there, I'm going to find a fight in February. March is going to be easy with Garcia and Spence. And watch out. I think Spence is going to suffer the same thing as the Charlos, man. He's not taking Garcia serious enough. Like I was saying in our little fight, I was out with Eric Cruz. Okay. Eric, the Preacher Cruz. The two of us there, we were having some sushi and some sake. He wasn't partaking in sake, of course. And we're talking 12:30, 1 a.m., right?
Yes.
And we saw Charlo 2 weeks ago when he should be training. 2 weeks ago he was there having drinks with the ring card girls and chilling, and Earl Spence was there too. Those guys don't have the focus, man. They're not professionals as they should be. And at this level and in this sport, if you're not 100% serious, you're basically, by not planning to win, man, you're planning to lose. I know that saying said incorrectly, but whatever. You get what I'm saying, right? You fail to plan, you plan to fail. Whatever, something like that. But that's all I got, man. Congrats on your show, Maddie. I will continue to support. I want to check out the Patreon, and obviously, if you have callers as great as me, you're doing well, man. So keep it up.
Oh,
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you, Jose, and have happy holidays with you and your family. Going to go out to Texas as we have back-to-back Texas callers. Who is it first? Is it Gary in Dallas or Fugatti? I think somewhere in Dallas as well. That's actually Gary. Gary's first. Gary, what up? Merry Christmas, man.
What's going on, Matty? Jose is in Texas?
No. Jose's in Canada. I said back-to-back callers, you and Fugatti.
Okay.
Fugatti's, next.
Oh, all right, I got you. Fugatti's in Texas? Oh, he told me that.
Yeah.
First off, I don't know what he's talking about. Luis Ortiz being the best.
We don't need to touch on that. That was a troll. That was that. I don't think he was serious about that.
Okay. All right. That was just all right.
That's him being Canadian.
Carlos.
That's him being Canadian. Just ignore him.
All right, but Ortiz is a Canadian or have any connection to Canada.
No.
I like Ortiz, but he's clearly the fourth best heavyweight. Like, clearly. I mean, all right. Charlos.
Yes.
Charlos. First of all, I watched it live. I scored it 10-2 for Jamel. The Tony Harris fight.
10-2. Wow. Ooh.
I scored it 10-2. I gave him the 4th and the 9th. I went back. I watched it again the next day. Let me not be biased. Let me just try to score this. 9-3. I could see 8-4. I can't get it any closer than 8-4.
Okay.
That's as close as I could make the fight. I don't think Jamel Charlo fought well. I really don't. Tony Harrison fought defensively. He ate a lot of shots. I didn't see him doing enough. It was one of those things with like Wild and Fury. It's not like I thought it was even though I had it wide on the scorecard, it wasn't one of those things where I thought Jamel Charlo was schooling him. I just thought he landed the better shots in pretty much every round.
Agreed.
I can get it to 8-4. I don't know how you get it 8-4 or 7-5 the other way. How did you have it? I know you had it for Jamel, but by what score?
I had it 7-5. I don't have the scorecard in front of me.
Yeah.
But I had it closer, and
Okay.
I could see Harrison winning, but it's again, you have to discredit a lot of what Charlo's doing. Last night I was a little bit more like you. I thought Charlo clearly won the fight. It was just a shitty fight, and I was calling it a robbery. Blah blah blah. I think that 8-4 scorecard for Harrison is utterly atrocious. I think that's just as bad as the 11-1 scorecard for Jamal Charlo in the main event.
Which was my question. Well, I mean, what was the worst scorecard of the night?
The worst one. The worst one is the 11-1. That one is atrocious.
That's pretty bad.
Because
Jamal Charlo might be my favorite fighter right now, and without a doubt, he lost the second, third, and fourth round. I'm watching this shit. He's losing every single round. There's no way Jamal Charlo clearly lost 2, 3, and 4. You can't even make an argument that he won those rounds. It's how you only give him one, and what round did she give for him? Do you know?
I forget. I forget which.
Korobov won.
I forget which round they gave him. I think it was the third. But it was bad. And Larry Hazard Sr., who was the unofficial scorecard person of PBC telecast, had it. I think it was 9-3 for Jamal Charlo, which I even thought that's pretty wide. And then his son, Larry Hazard Jr., is one of the official judges, and he's the one that had it 11-1. The Larry Hazard should be nowhere around boxing going forward. The first
Larry Hazard Jr. had it 11-1?
Yes.
There's something wrong with that. I mean, I didn't realize it was him that had it 11-1. He's a veteran judge. I mean, there's no way a veteran judge would see that fight 11-1. And that was my problem with the Harrison fight. Any veteran judge should realize that the right hand that Charlo is landing is outweighing the jabs that Harrison is landing. I didn't realize that was Hazard who scored it 11-1. That's again. I don't like to cry corruption, but I don't know, that looks bad. That looks really bad.
The 8-4 Harrison. I'm chalking that up for a lot of incompetence, or not really incompetence. Like, you're really liking one style of the fight. It's clear, in my opinion. Like, that judge clearly liked that. Whatever Harrison was doing on the back foot with the jab, that judge was enthralled by it. But 11-1, I don't see that, because arguably there's a legit argument that main event was a draw. Like, the first 6 rounds could be all Korobov rounds. And then Jamal started putting it on better in the second half of the fight. And obviously that 12th round was fantastic.
I thought starting in round 6.
Yeah.
I thought Jamal took charge of the fight. From the 6th round on, I only scored 1 round for Korobov, and that was the 11th.
Yes.
I didn't think look, Jamal didn't fight great either, but like there's 2 things. Korobov is better than people give him credit for. He has a win over Yuskatsugi.
Yes.
I don't know how many people know that, but how many guys at 168 do you think could beat Yuskatsugi? Because I would say none, maybe 1.
True.
Right? So, I mean, that's a really, really good win. So he's not a bad fighter, right? Bad fighters don't beat Yuskatsugi. Only really good fighters beat Yuskatsugi.
And also, and quickly just to add to it, the idea that Korobov is a underrated boxer. I mean, he was winning every single round against Andy Lee till he got knocked out, and he's only fought once since that knockout. Yeah. I chalk a lot of that up to like bad management more so than him being a bad fighter.
So I don't think that, again, he didn't fight great at all, obviously. But I thought Korobov was better than people gave him credit for, and I thought Charlo dominated the second half of the fight. The last 7 rounds, they only scored 1 for Korobov. Tricky lefties are going to do that to you. They're going to make you not look good, which is why historically, for the last 100 years, people didn't really want to fight slick lefties like that because they can make you look like that. The only thing I would say is, like, just boxing a 1-on-1, circle to your left and fire straight right hands. I didn't see that enough. Whenever Charlo threw straight right hands, he landed them, but he was still leading with jabs and hooks. I didn't understand that. Like, that's not going to work for you of a lefty like this.
And just overall, like, it's not that like Charlo wasn't like both Charlos. It's not that they weren't landing shots. It's not like they weren't being effective when they were throwing. Even though I think overall they were missing Whyte at times. When they were deciding to be in range and throwing combinations, they were clearly in control and winning. They just rarely did that in either's fight. Like they chose to be at range and make it a very slow-paced jabbing affair. I don't know if, it being on Fox, them debuting this deal, if that got to them, that made them nervous. I don't know. But there was zero sense of urgency from both guys. Zero. Until the 12th rounds. And then they realized, oh, shit, I might be losing the fight. And they actually decided, I'm going to go to second gear or third gear. And they were clearly dominant.
I'm fine. Like, we were talking about them being people. You thought, like, Jamal Charlo's path is already charted for him. All he has to do is win, right? If he gets Triple G and he beats Canelo, those are 2 fights he gets in the next year or year and a half or whatever. After that, with those 2 wins, he beats Triple G and Canelo, he'll be a pay-per-view star. Mm-hmm. He'd have beaten Canelo on paper. I guess Canelo would be on his own or whatever, but he will be that star because he would have those 2 wins over those 2 big names. So, I mean, for him, it was just kind of a so-so performance. For Jamal's got problems. Jamal is regressing. Like, he didn't look good against Trout. He hasn't looked good. I mean, Lubin was a first-round knockout, so he caught him. You didn't see how he was going to. You didn't see that fight progress. He looked crappy against Trout, and he looked crappy again. And I thought he beat Harrison clearly, but he didn't look good. And he was chasing him around. It's just that he made Harrison miss enough and landed enough, so I think he finished most of the round. But there's a problem there. I mean, you're saying that we're not going to get Hurd and Charlo now. And we could get it by the end of the year, but that would mean that Charlo needs to win his belt back.
He would need to activate his rematch clause, which he does have, and go straight into the immediate rematch, probably March, April, win it, maybe a tune-up in the late summer, and then he can fight her December, January, maybe of next year or the following year. But that's an expedited process, and I don't know if he does that. I think they might take a tune-up before that Harrison rematch.
I think that would be smart, but you're still assuming he take a tune-up before Harrison. I don't think they're going to do that, right? If you listen to Derek James in the post-fight press conference, they asked him what Charlo needed to do better, what he needed to work on, and he said he thought he fought well, and they don't need to work on much. That can't be your mentality, right? It was the same thing with Danny Garcia said he beat Keith Thurman. No, you didn't. Like, you need to understand that so you can make changes. If they go in thinking that Charlo fought well, then he's just going to lose again because he didn't fight well. He needs to fix it. He needs to go back to being the quintessential boxer puncher that took him to this level. And as much as I love Derek James and the guys that are in our boxing, he's not the guy for him. He needs to kind of go back to Ronnie Shields at this point because having him try to fight like some seek and destroy stalker like Errol Spence is not working for Charlo. It didn't work really well against Harrison. He's a B-level fighter. But Harrison got knocked out by Willie Nelson.
So
no one gets knocked out by Willie Nelson. So beating Jamal Charlo.
Quickly, Gary, I agree with a lot of what you say about Jamel. I don't necessarily agree with him going back to Ronnie Shields. But I want to get your take on Jamal Charlo and him still being with Ronnie Shields and his overall style and technique. You don't think he's stagnated in any way?
He's stagnated. I mean, it's again. I think Korobov. I don't think he fought that bad. I mean, it wasn't.
So you think
it had more to do with Korobov?
Okay. No, I'm mopping up what you're spilling there, Gary. It's more so that Korobov, we underrated him. He kind of played spoiler. 6-day notice fight. In a sense, you chalk it more up to that more so than Jamal looked bad. We need to really go back to the drawing board about his style and technique.
Yeah, I think Jamal is okay. I would say maybe don't fight slick anymore because that's not your thing. Avoid them if you can, which is why Andrade is going to be a problem for anyone, But yeah, I think I think Korobov gave him more problems than it was just, I think Korobov had a lot to do with Charlo looking ordinary.
I understand.
But Jamal's got problems. And I thought this even before the fight. And I still thought he would beat Harrison. But I had the Trout fight really close. I had him winning by 1 point. I had the 2 knockdowns be the difference. So, I mean, again, if Charlo does beat Harrison in a rematch, I mean, we already know he's going to lose. If he fights this way, he's going to lose to Hurd. You know what I'm saying? He is. So, I did want to see that fight. I still want to see it, but it's not with the same expectations that I had a year ago because I think Hurd will destroy it. I think Hurd will break it. So, I mean, can anyone really say after watching Charlo's last 2 fights, I think he's going to beat Hurd?
No.
That's what I'm saying. Again, I want to see because I don't even know if he beat Lara or Munguia at this point. Honestly, I really don't. He won't fight Munguia because of promotional issues. But if Charlo fought Lara, who would you pick to win that fight?
Lara.
I would too. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. And I want to get on the heavyweights real quick. The Whyte Chisora fight.
Of course.
Boy, those heavyweights are not good. I mean, there is a big gap in the talent of heavyweights. And that's what I want to talk about. There's 3 tiers of heavyweights. There's the first tier, top 3 guys, Wilder, Fury, and AJ. And then level 2, the second tier is the Ortiz tier. It's Luis Ortiz. And then the third tier is like the trash tier. And that's all of your Dillian Whyte, Derek Chisora, Dominic Brazil also looks like trash. I mean, it's just saying
hold on. Time out. Just a couple names. I need to know where you classify them. Alexander Povetkin, which tier?
He was at the Luis Ortiz tier, but he's done.
He's moved to the trash. Okay, no. I'm not. I just want to know. It's okay. You don't need to argue. I just want to know where these guys are. Big Baby Miller.
We don't know yet. Put him. I want to see him fight somewhere else. We don't know about him.
Yo, you and Jose have this love affection for Big Baby. I don't know what it is.
Because he's 315 pounds and can throw 80 punches around. That means something. Again, I'm not saying he would beat Ortiz. No. I don't know. But a guy who's 315 pounds who can throw 80 punches around for 12 rounds,
so
that's going to be a problem.
So right now, you would place him more in the trash tier, right? Just to use your words.
Until further review, I thought he was losing every round pretty much to that last guy he fought, the French guy or whoever.
Bogdan Danu.
That card in Kansas City. Yeah.
It wasn't very very quickly. It was not in Kansas City. It was in Mulvane, Kansas.
In Mulvane, Kansas. I thought he was losing almost. They're putting fights in weird places. We went to Regis Prograis versus Fandango fight. That was in somewhere really weird too. Why are they putting?
Remember all those PBC on FS1 shows that were in like Bethlehem, Pennsylvania?
Bethlehem, Pennsylvania is only a little bit outside of Philly, though, right? I mean, it's not the middle of nowhere, right? Or is it?
I don't know, but I'll put it this way. When you see a fight card in LA or New York, you know the venue it's at. It makes sense. Mulvane, Kansas, Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. Like, some of these just aren't rocking with it, man. Like, I'm sorry. Like, there's some, like, what's the big one in, I think it's in Connecticut. There's a big casino out there.
The Mohegan Sun.
Mohegan Sun, and then there's a Foxwood casino out there too. That's pretty big. But other than that, come on, Mulvane and Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, those are the best.
I don't know how you draw people there. I mean, I guess I don't know. I mean, how can you expect to draw a crowd in Mulvane, Kansas?
You don't.
Right. So why would you put a fight there?
I don't know.
Whatever. Look up where Ndongo versus I want to say it was like in South Dakota or something like that. Ndongo
yes, that one they got a big site fee from a casino. That's what happens with a lot of these fights that end up in weird places is that they get site fees from some odd place. Some place will offer them, well over 6 figures, maybe 7 figures to have their fights there. Yeah. I know from somebody in Progress's management team that they got 7-figure site fee for that Ndongo Progress fight.
Okay, they were putting the fight in South Dakota.
So exactly.
That's where the fight is. Okay. But I mean, were you impressed with either Whyte, Chisora, or Brazil? Any of those guys? Did any of those guys look like they would pose any challenge to any of the top 3 heavyweights?
Brazil, no, not at all. That fight was atrocious. God, I literally just laid down and almost fell asleep watching that. I'll be completely honest about that one. The Whyte Chisora fight was completely entertaining to me. I know Whyte has a ceiling though. Like I don't think Whyte beats AJ. I don't think he beats Tyson Fury. I don't think he beats Deontay Wilder. But at this level, I think Whyte is a fantastic fighter. Like he is, in my opinion, like a Danny Garcia of his division.
You think Dillian Whyte is a Danny Garcia?
Yeah, ignore Danny.
Okay.
Ignore Danny's 140 resume. Like only 147. Right, just put that for perspective. Right, ignore 140, only 147, and where he's at right now today in the hierarchy. Yeah, he's kind of like a Danny Garcia. Like he loses to all the top guys, he beats everyone else in exciting fashion, and he has great knockout power in that left hook.
So okay, Danny Garcia, I think we agree. So give the top 3 guys. We'll say Crawford, Spence, and Keith Thurman. He fought
Porter
competitively, right? He fought him competitively. Porter.
Yeah.
Okay, Porter or Thurman. He fought either of those guys competitively. Mm-hmm. So I thought he was both of them. I thought the judges got both of them right.
Yeah.
And I think Spence would probably knock him out, and I think Crawford would win probably 10 rounds against him. Mm-hmm. Deontay Wilder would destroy Dillian Whyte in 2 rounds. He eats too many shots.
I don't know about that.
Shots like that against you can't sit there and eat shots like that against Deontay Wilder. You know what I'm saying? It only takes one, and he eats way too many shots. And I think Fury would be the 120 to 108, and AJ would knock him out. You know, AJ doesn't have the power equivalent to Wilder, but it would be an easy night to work for.
But it wasn't an easy night in the first fight. What are you talking about? Like we've seen him fight AJ. That was a great back and forth fight. And Dylan Whyte's only gotten better since then. His jab is phenomenally better than what it was before that. I think his left hook is better. I think his footwork is better. Like, he has gotten exponentially better as a boxer since that first AJ fight, and that was a great back and forth fight.
Okay, so you think this fight? You think that they're going to fight in April, right?
Yes.
Okay. You think that fight's going to be competitive? You think he's going to be able to? I'm not saying he's going to win, but you think he's going to be able to make it competitive?
Yeah.
He's going to either win rounds or hurt. Okay.
Yeah.
I think he gets knocked out in 4 rounds. It's not close, but we'll see. 4 or 5 rounds. I look at him and the fight was entertaining, but it was entertaining in the same way that tough man competitions are entertaining. I mean, they weren't too highly skilled fighters. I mean, I don't know.
You didn't like Chisora's body work. I mean, and again, like you've compared things to like the '90s heavyweight era, right? A Riddick Bowe and a Ruddick, like those guys weren't like exponentially better boxers than Whyte, Ortiz, Povetkin, Miller, like that class of boxer right now in the heavyweight division.
Riddick Bowe was. Riddick Bowe would annihilate any of those heavyweights. Riddick Bowe was great. He was just fat and lazy.
Okay. I think you grossly underestimate this current crop of heavyweights.
Maybe. Again, heavyweight boxing doesn't really move the needle to me. Like, I was way more into Warrington versus Frampton.
Of course.
Than I was for Whyte versus Chisora. You know, that's the last thing. So there was there were the 2 main events. The main event, the co-main event in Brooklyn. 6 scorecards, right? 3 for each fight. 4 of them made absolutely no sense. 4 of them were there's all 3 scorecards in the Jamal Charlo fight and the 119-108 scorecard in the Jamal Charlo fight. None of those make any sense at all. And in the 2 fights in the UK, all 6 scorecards are completely reasonable. Right? I scored Frampton and Warrington 116-112 for Warrington, and I had Chisora up a point at the time of the stoppage, which all 3 judges had at 1 point either way. So all those scorecards are completely reasonable. Why does it seem like it's distinctly an American problem with these scorecards?
I think the problem in judging overall is a problem. I'm not going to really specify in the UK or the US because I don't really know the UK system in terms of accountability. But in the US, there's zero accountability. So if you have a bad judge with a bad scorecard for a long period of time in every single jurisdiction, there was zero process to reprimand, to punish, to suspend that judge. That just did not exist. And on top of that, the people that get these appointments to judgeships for the commissions are friends of commission heads. So they're not necessarily the most qualified people, especially when most of these people started. When we talk about Glenn Throwbridge or Larry Hazard Sr., these guys have been doing this for nearly 40, 50 years. And they've just stayed there. They have continued to put out bad scorecard after bad scorecard because there's zero accountability and there's zero pressure, really, on the commissions to change that.
So, in Texas, we had a judge, and this is the one that Paulie screamed at the Wine Diaz fight, Gail Van Hoy. And Gail Van Hoy was known throughout Texas for whenever you needed a good old boy hometown decision, you put Gail Van Hoy in. Do you think that's what's going on? Do you think the commission or the promoter has some judges that he knows how they're going to score a fight?
I'm not going to say this is widespread that promoters, or that it's common at all that promoters go out there and tell judges, particular judges, like how to score cards or how to score fights. I don't think that really happens. But what does happen is that all of these people are friendly. Like, all these people are in the same club together, if that makes sense. It's very common for the week leading up to the fight for there to be a big banquet dinner with all the officials, with the promoters, with the managers, basically with all the people that are running the show. They all have dinner together at a banquet before most of these big fight weeks. So it's a club mentality more so than outright corruption, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm wondering why these scorecards. That's 3 this month, right? Go back to Wild and Fury. That's 3 in major fights. It is just inexplicably bad scorecards. Like, scoring that is just ridiculous. And but then I watch fights in the UK, and you get reasonable score. I mean, you may disagree with them, but they're completely reasonable.
No, but I mean, Gary, there's always going to be bad scorecards on every card. Like, I guarantee you, if we went down on those UK fights and looked at every single scorecard for every single fight, we're going to find bad scorecards. We will. Guaranteed.
But this is not once in a while. This is 3 major fights this month, right? So it's like, why don't you get the best judges out there, or the most experienced judges? I guess the most experienced judges necessarily aren't the best judges, because, like you said, Larry Hazard had that 118 scorecard.
Exactly. So, like that, and that's inherently the problem is. And I forget who said in the chat. I think it was Hassan saying who was the woman that scored Mayweather Canelo a draw. That was Adelaide Bird, the wife of Robert Bird.
C.J. Ross. Adelaide Bird.
Oh, that's right. That was the Canelo fight. Sorry, C.J. Ross.
Yeah.
C.J. Ross got attacked on social media, and that's why she never showed up again on fight nights. Like, she never judged again.
I think she retired after that, because
that was brutal.
That is hysterical. Yeah, I remember watching that fight, and my brother called me afterwards, like, how did you have it? I said 10-2. He's like, you scored 2 rounds to Canelo. I was like, yeah. He's like, well, that was generous, right? This woman had to fight a draw. It's like, what? I can't even understand the fight you're watching. Like, there's no way Canelo even thought he did enough to earn a draw. Like, that fight was legitimately 12-0 or 11-1. I gave it 10-2.
And she's a great example. Sorry not to cut you off, Gary, but she's a great example of a person that's not qualified to be a judge but gets the judge appointment because of who she knows or who she's married with. Her husband's not for Cesar Ross, but moving to Adelaide Bird. Sorry not to cut you off, but for Adelaide Bird, that's why she got that appointmentship. For Cesar Ross, I forget who she was really good friends with in the Nevada Commission. But that's what happens. All these people are friends with each other. They get their buddy a job in the government, and that is what it is. And until there's some sort of accountability, there's some sort of oversight with these commissions, or they become much more of an electoral position instead of a state-appointed position, there's not going to be much change in what we see.
Yeah, that's all I got, Matt. Thanks for the time.
Thank you, Gary. I always appreciate your calls. I want to say, though, for a guy, I love you, Gary, but you really hated that Whyte Chisora fight, but yet you want to talk about that more so than the Frampton Warrington fight, which we never really talked about, which you really liked. Interesting. People hate calling, as always. Anyways, call in 323-870-4051. Press 1 to get in the queue if you are international. Email me, mixedcombatradio@gmail.com to get a free international and permanent call-in link. Going to head out to Fugatti in Texas, and after him, move on to the rest of the fight cards in some detail, and then head on out of here and enjoy the rest of the Christmas after that, unless we have more callers. Fugatti, how you doing?
Hey, man. Hey, I'm just going to talk about the PBC box card, and then I'll just stay on the line for once you go to other stuff.
All right.
But, yeah, man, I agree with you. Extremely disappointing card overall, right? Like, it was not very interesting on the fight. The Brazil fight was atrocious. I hate that he went after Wilder immediately, because I'm like, oh great, this is like Joshua going to Whyte. It's like everybody's, I jokingly said in our chat, the 2019, the year of the mandatories, because seems like everyone's trying to position themselves for maybe easier fights this year, mandatory fights. So I'm really hoping we don't get that Dominic and Wilder fight, Brazil Wilder fight, because Wilder's gonna fucking kill that guy. And then, I agree with Gary on the scoring, and you yourself as well. I had Jermell at 8-4, and I definitely could have seen 7-5, but I don't see a way that they could have scored that fight for Harrison. He put up a hell of a fight. Jermell didn't look good, all of that, but to say he won the fight, I just don't know anyone who could argue legitimately that they had a scorecard where Harrison was winning.
Quickly, just to interject, and obviously he's not here, so I can't really speak for him completely. But Eric Cruz, proud Patreon member, somebody that we talked all the time in our group chat, he scored it for Harrison. He's been adamant that Harrison won that.
Did he score it for him? See, but did he score it for him, or did he just say that he thought he looked really good? That's different, because people watch a fight but don't score it and say they just thought the other guy looked good.
Mm-hmm.
That he made Jermell look bad. I don't know that Eric put a scorecard up, because I have a scorecard. I had an 8-4. And I thought Harrison did make Jermell look bad at times.
Smoke.
Well, most of the fight, honestly, right? But and I'm not even saying to score the fight. A lot of people don't score those fights because it's just, we all assumed the Charlos were winning those fights hands down, easy, probably 116, 112, or something.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't going to be close. But they both ended up having, and honestly, I think Jermall lost his fight, or came damn close to losing his fight. I thought Korobov was boxing the shit out of him. Now, the one thing is I didn't have a scorecard for that fight. I was driving during that fight.
Mm-hmm.
And don't do this at home, kids, but I was driving and watching the fight. But, I didn't score it. But Korobov was really putting Jermall in some weird spots. So I just think, overall, they didn't have a good showing. I don't think they should ever really fight on the same nights. I think they're too close as far as being twins. The emotion of the night probably took them over. I hope they bounce back pretty good from it. But I agree with you that they're both kind of stagnant. I don't see them gaining anything.
No.
What's 31 fights for Jermell? 32?
Something around that,
20,
and
24 or something.
Jamal's, I think Jamal's 27-0. I want to say, or now 28-0.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you say you're the man, and that's what everyone was saying about these guys. That's what you got to understand too. Fans were saying these guys, Hurd, no problem. Lara, no problem. Munguia, no problem. That's what they were saying about Jermell. When you talk about Jamal, it's okay, so Triple G, no problem. He's ducking him. Canelo, no problem. He's ducking him.
Mm-hmm.
All this.
Yep.
And it's these guys are not on that level. They're literally not on that level. Hurd will smash Jermell. Smash him if they fight. They've got to figure something out.
Man,
I
want the Charlos to know when they listen to this. Fugatti lives in Dallas, Texas. Pull up. That's all I'm saying.
Bring it. I'm fans of those guys. I
want smoke.
I was so stoked for this showcase because I thought it was going to be their coming out party.
And
but
it wasn't.
I think they believed that hype. Here's the thing. I think they started to buy into the hype. Jermell really bought into the hype that he is this KO artist. He's got a 50% KO rate. He's not a KO artist. You got 15 knockouts in 32 fights or something. Again, you're not a KO artist. He needs to box and not look for the KO. Box to win the fight and get the KO in the Lubin moment when you get a good counter punch. it's just not smart. Now Jamal is more of a knockout artist, but let's be real. Like, he's not going to knock out Triple G or Canelo. Those guys both have magnificent chins.
Let's just put it this way: Korobov was making Jamal miss time and time again just by ducking under and slipping off the center line, and that's Korobov. Canelo may be the best defensive boxer right now. Like, you can make that argument, and
100%.
And I would not look at you like you're crazy at all, even if there's a Lomachenko in the discussion, even if you add Mayweather in the discussion. Right now, 2018 heading 2019, Canelo might be the best defensive guy in the world. Jamal is going to miss a lot, and he was eating counters by Korobov.
And he's going to get rocked.
Yes,
and that's the thing, though. But then he's going to be getting hit by Canelo. And let's be real. Like, Canelo is going to be killing him to the body, killing him. I mean, he's not going to beat Canelo. These guys are not where people thought they were. You're now talking about Korobov Charlo being in a category with 154 pounds where he is going to be a 50-50 fight in a lot of fights now. Like, whereas like before this fight, you would have said, "Oh, he beats that guy. Oh, he beats that guy." That might be a tough fight, but he wins. Now it's like, oh, shit, he might not win that fight.
Yeah.
Laura, he might not win that fight. You know?
Quickly, Fugatti, I want to get your take on overall the air quote debut of the PBC on Fox deal. I'll say my initial thoughts, and then I want you to sort of give your thoughts on just the telecast itself, at the production, etc. I thought it was awful. Like, I didn't like the commentary team. I thought they didn't vibe at all together. It was a lot of uninformed opinions being given out. On top of that, obviously the fights themselves up and down the card from at least the telecast card were just bad. It was supposed to be a showcase, and it wasn't at all. We have controversial decision, bad fights, bad production. I think and again, the viewership is mediocre. It's not great. It's not bad. It's just mediocre. And if I'm Al Heyman and PBC right now, I'm instantly in a boardroom talking to my marketing team and saying, okay, how do we switch this up? Because right now the schedule, looking out for the first quarter of 2019, does not show that there's a exact card that would fix the problems that we saw on Saturday. Your thoughts on the card, the first debut of this deal?
Oh, man, and this is hard for me to say, but I really think DAZN's commentary team is better, and they're shit. Like,
no, you are
horrible.
You are 100% right, and I want to really emphasize that you said the DAZN commentary team and the telecast itself or broadcast itself is still bad. This is worse.
Yes, it's worse. Lennox Lewis is supposed to be the expert analyst. Like, they have a formula for this, right? They got the one guy who kind of like drives the conversation. They got the one color commentary guy, and then they got the expert analyst kind of guy doing commentating. That's usually kind of like the formula, right? Mm-hmm. If you think about the three guys, I always try to think about it like that. There's one guy that asks the questions and drives the conversation during the fight. The one guy that like kind of is really emotional, gets into the fight, and then the one guy who like has boxed or trained or something and gives insight into what the fighters are thinking. Well, what did Lewis do the whole night? It was terrible. I hated listening to him talk about boxing. Like, it was just weird. Like, and I like Lennox. Lennox is one of my favorite heavyweights. Like, he's a smart fighter. Like, he knows boxing, but he just wasn't good on the mic. And then the other two were terrible. And then
I'll be honest, Goosen wasn't bad, in my opinion, but Kenny Albert, God, that was so atrocious, man. That gives me nightmares.
It was not good. Yeah, it was not good. I think they really are going to have to do a lot. This is like we talked about. Fox is in 120 plus million homes in the U.S. Like 120 plus million. And you're talking cards on ESPN and ESPN Plus. Now, granted, maybe better or more well-known fighters. Maybe the Charlos aren't as well-known as I thought. I really thought their viewership would be more like when Fox was, I think Wilder put up 4 million on Fox before. It was a high number. It was over 3 million. Mm-hmm. And like we talked about, Danny and Thurman was like 4 million.
There's 5.
So,
just for those that want to know, those are different networks. Like we mentioned, a card that was on CBS, cards that are on NBC. But to be honest, those are all cards that are not cards. Those are all networks that are comparable. The same homes that have Fox have CBS, have NBC. So it's not like you're reaching a wider audience. It's the same audience. And to touch on it briefly with your point,
2.5 to 3 million.
I agree. And touching briefly on your point about the ESPN telecasts that have done that number that we just saw on Saturday, 1.6 million or above that, and ESPN's in around 40 million roughly less homes than those networks, CBS, Fox, NBC, and ABC. They're able to pull those numbers mainly with their top 2 guys, obviously Crawford, Lomachenko. And I said this to you off air, obviously, Fu, and just to reiterate it for those listening, Loma and Crawford are the 2 top earners of Top Rank. So they have the biggest marketing dollars, they have the biggest budget behind them. So the Charlos are not really comparable to those guys in a 1-to-1 analog, because the Charlos are, let's be honest, not anywhere close to the top 5 draws of PBC. They just aren't. They're maybe top 10, and that's being honestly very generous. And
I think Gary is right, though, that they have all the making.
Yes.
Like, all they have to do is follow the game plan, and they can be there. That's the thing is there. I mean, let's make like women probably think these dudes are attractive. They dress very nice. They're always giving some kind of controversial shit when they're on a mic, right? And then they're great fighters. They didn't prove it last night, but overall, their career, they're entertaining to watch. And you're talking 31 fights, and you get your first, real chance to headline, and you really kind of bomb. And then you got other fighters who, let's be real, like Crawford, was in that same kind of area of fights, done way more, Loma in 13, 12 fights has done way more, and has got the viewership. It's just, I don't know. I think this is something to do with how, we talked about this, the inactivity of that group of fighters. Like, they fight once, twice a year. They don't really unify belts. It's something that it seems like I want to see what they do going forward with Wilder, how Thurman's numbers look, things like that, because I'm really thinking that fight didn't do a lot of justice for these Fox cards, and I wonder what the next one's gonna do.
It was at the very least a stumble out the door to begin this deal. At the very least, it's that. I mentioned this. I don't know if I mentioned this on the show or on Patreon yesterday. But I think another large part to why the viewership was just mediocre was because none of these fights were perceived as competitive fights. And right now, none of the Fox schedule has competitive main events. You have cards that have big names on, like a Thurman card, a Danny card, Sean Porter. Those should all draw over 2 million viewers. They should. Absolutely. The average should be 2.2, 2.3, 2.5. They should be. But none of those fights are competitive. None of those fights are really going to draw to a casual audience. So right now, this Fox deal and the very start of it and the infancy of it seems really in the bubble when it's now on this big network with this big exposure and it's not capitalizing on it like it should. The Top Rank and ESPN had this issue for a long time at first until their cards really started pulling great numbers. Obviously the Manny Pacquiao debut, I think, was a better launch to that deal when you compare it to the Charlos. Think about it. Bob Arum put out the second biggest pay-per-view star of the last 20 years as his opener debut of his ESPN deal. PBC put out their number 10th ranked draw as their headliner in a tune-up. You know, that's not going to bow well to the casual audience and trying to get those fans to watch your card. Why would they? They barely know the Charlos if they do.
Yeah. Yeah, 100. I mean, I agree with all those points. I think that they'll rebound fine. I think that they've got a great stable of fighters, but they've got to start. I mentioned this to you in the chat. Like, we should be seeing Mikey versus Loma and Spence versus Crawford. What are we seeing? Mikey versus Spence. Why? Because it's in-house. It's all the money's staying there. Like, it's easy to make for them, and they don't have to like work with any other outfit. Like, that has to change. That has to change for them. Like, their fighters, like Tank Davis has fought one time a year for the last 3 years or something. Like, it's pretty silly. Like, we're looking at these long gaps of fights where you got other people like fighting 3 times a year, 4 times a year. Like, 4 times might be too much, you know, but 4 times, like, those people are getting their name out there. They're getting recognized. They're getting views. Like, they're building their resume. They're unifying. You know, we got some people that winning belts. They're going right into unification. Then you got people who are winning belts on the specifically on the PBC side, winning belts and fighting 5 defenses before they ever unify. You know, and it's, man, at that point, you know, you're a belt holder for a year and a half, 2 years before you're even taking a unification fight. This is not good for like the divisions or boxing in general. And I do agree with Jose that you can't come in like Jermell. If he was taking the tougher fights, if he went and lost to Hurd, no one would be upset. Like, no one would be like, man, this guy, we overhyped this guy. They'd be like, damn, Jared Hurd's a great fighter. That rematch is going to be great, you know? But when you lose to like Tony Harrison, it's like, oh, is he at the level we thought he was? Was it just bad scoring? But bad scoring comes from somewhere. It's like, you know, like I wanted to bring this up about the judging because Gary brought this up. I've seen it with Canelo versus Triple G, and now this fight, and somewhat, I guess, not really the Wilder fight, but do you think the judges really are kind of changing how they view fights? Because we used to all agree that the guy that's on his front foot, the aggressor, like with the jab, everything, like they're going to win the fight. And now it's like the more defensive, the guy who makes the other guy look bad with missing punches, things like that. They seem to be winning a lot of these fights. On the cards, at least. So, I mean, is it changing the way, like, the judges now are looking at fights? Do you feel like that's it? Or is this like a fluke?
It's not a fluke. It's just that we have rampant incompetence. So,
yeah,
it's similar when we see, like, 2 very old fighters fight, and it kind of looks suspect. But it's just because, hey, these are 2 very old guys that aren't really athletic, so it's going to look weird at times. If the whole system of judging and how we get judges is inherently not corrupt, that's the wrong word, but just lacks accountability, lacks training, then of course we're going to have rampant incompetence. Of course we're going to have times where scorecards are all over the place on fights, when fights are close, you know, competitive. There's not a lot of action going on, or the action's so high from both guys that's hard to really differentiate who's winning for like the Triple G Canelo example, or for a Harrison Charlo example for the difference in volume level. Fights are hard to score, especially if you don't know how to score them. And there's zero training really for judges. There's zero accountability, and of course we're going to have weird scorecards. I don't think there's any, you know, shift in the culture of judging about how fights are scored. I think it's just, no, it's the same old, same old. We have bad judging all over the place.
Yeah. So I sent you guys some cuts of a few videos that had come out. One had Suleiman on it, and he was talking about some reforms that they are thinking about coming into 2019. Did you listen to any of those?
I remember it. I don't have it off the top of my head. I remember one of them was like 5 judges, instant replay. There was a couple other ones I think they were thinking about adding, stuff like that.
So he said that they were looking at potentially telling, like, judges would have to give their scores on the 4th and the 8th rounds. The corners would be able to know those scores. 4 to 5 judges for, like, major championship fights, like big fights, and then instant replay being available. So I think that, like, they know there's issues and that is hurting. And that was on Boxing Social, by the way, if anyone wants to listen to the interviews. But they know, and I think they want to work on this because, you know, the controversy sells, but at the same time for the fans, like the casuals love the controversy, right? Then they can
No.
That's, you know.
Oh, well, there is a Conor McGregor throwing a dolly through a bus controversy, right? And then there's, this sport is corrupt controversy. One of them is good for selling tickets. One of them is not.
But one gets people to talk about boxing too, though, because my friends that don't watch will text me every time and be like, "Man, I really thought Triple G won against Canelo."
But
like,
come on, stop.
Man.
That's Triple G Canelo. That did 1 million plus pay-per-view buys. Of course, your friend texted you about that. Did they text you?
But it happened with Wilder Fury. It's not going to happen with Charlo, of course. I'm not saying with Charlo.
But again, that's throw that comparison out. Like throw that anecdote out because it's not, I think, indicative of the grand scheme of things here. I think on a whole, when casual fans look at a fight, regardless of the fight, and they say that, fighter A clearly won and fighter B gets the judge's decision, they say, this shit is corrupt. This is boxing. We know what it is. And that's a reason why boxing is such a niche sport. It's because of the perceived corruption of it. It's because of the perceived ineptness of the regulation of the sport. That's why casual fans don't. That's why people are like flocking away from the NBA, from the NFL, because people believe things are corrupt. That type of controversy. That type of controversy does not sell. It might sell. It might sell news articles. It might sell videos on YouTube, but it's not going to sell the actual product or the sport itself. It's not going to grow the sport itself at all.
Yeah, people aren't returning to watch other fighters. They're only watching big fights, and then they get the controversy. Yeah. I get you. I get you with that. You're right. It's just, to me, I think that people really enjoy like taking pleasure in that. But sports fans are super emotional about people they like. You know, if you got a favorite football team, there's a lot of emotion invested in that. You know, favorite fighter, a lot of emotion invested in that. You know, so yeah, I can see where you'd say like you get all, you know, you love this fighter and then they get this decision here. Like I'm sure a lot of Charlo fans are really, you know, not loving the sport right now. So yeah, I get you with that.
But it's not just like fandom. It's not just fandom. It's the idea that this sport is not on the up and up. When that becomes a prevailing consensus idea amongst pop culture, amongst just the populace, then that brand, that product, that the stock of it drops instantly. You can take that away from sports, from any industry. When that starts happening, like Johnson & Johnson's, right? That's a completely different example, right? But Johnson & Johnson's has got a huge lawsuit. They found asbestos in the baby powder, right? I guarantee you no one's going out and buying Johnson & Johnson's right now at Walgreens or CVS, right, Phil?
Correct.
I think time and time again when casual fans see a Canelo Triple G fight, a Charlo fight, whatever it is, and they say, oh, man, this guy won it and he just got robbed. It's a robbery. It's corrupt. After that happens over a while, they stop watching. They stop tuning in.
Well, especially when commentators join in.
Yes.
That's the other thing. Like, you wouldn't see that in the NBA. Like, there's not going to be people on the sidelines saying this series was rigged for LeBron James.
But you're going to have Paulie Malignaggi up there yelling at the top of his lungs, it's a conspiracy, it's rigged, all this stuff, when he should be saying, look, these judges are bad. We should fix up the system. We should make sure that these judges are accountable. If we have bad judges, they should not be allowed to judge again. We don't have that system right now. But he's not saying that. The masses are not hearing that. The masses are hearing it's a robbery, it's corrupt, blah, blah, blah. And therefore, that has hurt the stock, the brand of the sport of boxing. It has. That's why we are a niche.
What do you think about? I want to say Gary did bring up the UK and UK judging, and I believe that UK judges are reviewed on every fight.
I want to say you're right.
But I heard that from somewhere.
I want to say you're right. I want to say there is some accountability with the BBOC, with their judges, and that's why we have, at least that's a more recent thing, for example, and that's why recently we've seen, I think, better scorecards out of the UK than the US. Right now, the ABC is a toothless tiger when it comes to regulation and sanctioning. And it's really on independent commissions, state commissions in the U.S. to determine what they do in terms of accountability, in terms of innovation. I've mentioned this before. I think it was New Jersey, and they were experimenting with putting judges in a back room without the commentary audio and with a TV screen of the fight and testing it out that way.
It's a great system.
And obviously, it's not actually fully implemented. It's purely being tested at this point, and it's going to take years to finally test out, okay, how do we really fix the system? But until then, if you're a fan, write to your congressman, write to your state legislator, write to your governor, because they are the ones that appoint the commission heads, which then appoint refs and judges. So that is really the only avenue you as a listener, as a fan, if you're listening in the U.S., that you have to try to fix the system. That's it.
Yeah, I was really surprised listening to Suleiman say that even the WBC doesn't have any control over the judging.
No, of course not.
They don't get to have anything. They can't say no, that person shouldn't be on this. You shouldn't be judging this, and then largely the fighters obviously don't either, and you have to have it that way because their draws would get.
That's not inherently true. When a commission hearing happens, they do appoint judges and refs for these fights coming up, and as a promoter, you do have the right to be at that hearing and say, I don't want that ref, I don't want that, blah blah. You do have that right. I think fighters do have a right to actually say, I don't want that ref. A lot of commissions have that that sort of wording in their regulations. What else did you say? You said something else that I was thinking of. Repeat what you said a little bit, Fu, about whatever you were saying. Sorry.
About the refs being reviewed. And then, so what I was going to ask.
Oh, no, I remember now. I remember now. Hold on. I remember now. The WBC should have no say-so, or any sanctioning body should have no say-so in who refs and who judges at all. Because
of the money they make off of the fight.
Absolutely.
They're always going to swing it toward their big draw.
Yes, just like I fundamentally think promoters should have a recommendation, but it's not their decision. It's up to the state official. And the only problem is that that state official is a appointed position, and we have no say in that state official. That should be a democratically appointed, elected official, and it's not.
I think there should be tiers of judging, and you should have to prove yourself as a judge to get to judge a fight like Wilder Fury, Triple G Canelo, things like that. There should just be tiers of judges that do those fights, tiers of refs that do those fights.
Well, Fu, you have to. I'll put it this way: there isn't a on paper tier, but there is. You can't go get your ref's license or judge license and go judge a big time Showtime pay per view. That just does not exist. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But what the problem is though is that
multiple...
the problem is though, Fu, is that we do have that top tier, and that top tier has no turnover. Put it in more of a political sense, 'cause I know you're a political guy. Like, think of the turnover in Congress right now. There's not a high turnover rate there, right? That's why we've had the same stagnation in our government for decades upon decades upon decades, because it's the same people in office. It's the same thing with reffing and judging. It's been the same fucking people for decades and decades and decades, and there's been no innovation from them, because why? They're the ones making money off the system.
Yeah. Yeah, but there are people that like, if you look at a judge like C.J. Ross or Adelaide Bird or the guy who was on the Wilder judging that gave Wilder the fight, those guys have all had bad cards, controversial cards in another fight.
Of course.
Like,
That's not the issue.
That's something where it's like,
I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say that's not the issue. Again, for the commission, that they're not thinking that's an issue. It, of course, is an issue, but for the commission, they're not thinking, oh, that's a problem. They're thinking, oh, this ref this big fight, cool. He's in that tier. You see what I'm saying? Like once you get to,
like, this guy's worked this before.
Exactly.
Once this guy's fucked up in one of these fights.
They're not even thinking about that. No, not at all. They're thinking, oh, I know CJ. She's lovely. I know Adelaide Bird. She's awesome. You know, she's married to Robert. Me and Robert go get cocktails on Saturday. That's what this is.
Man, we need some change there. I do think that 5 judges, though, in one of those fights, that's going to probably at least give you more of a consensus winner. Doesn't mean there won't be bad judged fights or poorly judged fights, but it at least seems a little harder to have with 5 people the issue that 3 people present.
I think that's merely a Band-Aid mitigating the issue, and I think it's more structural, as always.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, but overall, on the PBC stuff, very poor showing on the first show. Jermell and Jamal, like, obviously not headliners, probably should not fight on the same cards. I think that was really tough for them. And I do think that they said the rematch had to be within 4 months. So he probably like March or April for that rematch. And I don't know, hot take. I don't know how much better Jermell will look in 4 months against Harrison. Because I think he tried to come out aggressive. Harrison might beat him again. I don't know. Maybe the scoring wouldn't be as bad. But I don't think he knocks Harrison out. I guess.
I don't know.
Thinks he'll
I don't know. I think he does in a rematch, only because if you look at that 12th round when he actually did step on the gas pedal, he did hurt Harrison. You know, and
it was the 11th round, right, where he hurt him. Wasn't that? I don't think it was.
I think it was the 12th.
11th
I think it was the 12th.
The 12th, he just ran the whole time.
I don't know about that.
I can't remember. I have to rewatch it, but yeah, no, I just agreeing with your thoughts. The PBC really, they got a lot of work to do, but so does the Zone has a lot of work
Everyone
to do.
does. Everyone
ESPN
does. Everyone
is
does.
Probably a little bit ahead of everyone, but everyone has work to do.
Look, I know. I already saw people in the chat saying, "Oh, this channel really hates on PBC." Look, obviously you are either a PBC fanboy or you just don't listen to this show enough. I criticize ESPN telecasts all the time. I criticize the Zone telecasts all the time. Then, other than Showtime, and which I still have its criticisms of, especially with Paulie and some of the rants he does, but no one is really doing it right. A lot of these networks are lazy when it comes to broadcasting the sport. ESPN is lazy when it comes to it. So is DAZN. So is Fox. Showtime is, I think, more the gold standard right now. But they can all get better, of course. The idea that, they're perfect, why? Like, nothing, no entity in this sport is above criticism. And if you do think that, then you're probably a fanboy. But Fugatti, thank you for the call.
All right, man.
And I know you said bring you back on when we're going to discuss the other fights, or I was going to discuss the other fights, but I'm not going to because this show took a very long time. Shout out to, obviously, you, Gary, and Jose calling in. Really appreciate that. Jay saying, where does Matt see someone saying that? Oh, Jay, I saw it earlier. Jay. Don't worry. It wasn't you. Don't worry. And Jay's saying, I wanted to address it. Jay's saying fighters should be judging fights. The reason why a lot of fighters don't judge fights is because there's not a lot of money in it. You're probably making a few $1,000s for that night if you're if you're doing a big time fight. But that's about it. And you're maybe only getting one of those a month, right? You're only getting one of those big checks a month. The rest of your month is spent probably judging and reffing smaller shows in your area. So let's say you're a Vegas ref. Obviously, there's not fights every weekend in Vegas. So the rest of the week, you're reffing and judging smaller events and smaller fights in Vegas. And when you're starting out, you don't start out at the very top. You start out at a lower rate than that. Though I do know some that have made the transition, especially in MMA. I've seen a lot more of that. I'm not saying it doesn't help the issue, Jay, but I don't think it solves the issue, if that makes sense. I'm a kid who did say that. Said I need to listen more. I hear a good amount of PBC criticism because they deserve some criticism. I think they do a fine job. They do a fine job, but they deserve criticism. The bar should be lowered some for these cards. No, see, maybe that's where we fundamentally disagree on. I'm a kid. I think the bar is raised every time PBC comes up to bat, so to speak. Every time PBC has an event, the bar is raised. Why? Because they are the ones saying they are the trendsetters. They are the ones saying we are the future of boxing in the U.S. They're the ones that got the Fox deal. They're the ones with the biggest stable in the sport, with the most champions in the sport. The bar is 100% raised every time PBC comes up to bat. I don't hold main events and PBC to the same standard. I don't hold K2 and PBC to the same standard. Hell, even Golden Boy, Matchroom USA, those are all inferior products and entities compared to PBC. So I expect the best out of them every time. And I think you can view that in a negative way. I view that in a positive way. I love what PBC does so much. I love their roster so much. I expect a lot from them. And last Saturday, they did not deliver. And maybe if, Jamal and Jamel came out here and had fantastic knockout wins, Brazil and Negron have a fight of the year, we wouldn't be talking about this. But that didn't happen. The fights were bad, fights were controversial, and it left a bad taste in everyone's mouth. On top of that, even if the fights were great, the broadcast wasn't. I think Ray Mancini, Lennox Lewis, Kenny Alberts, they all dragged down the commentary of the entire telecast. And on top of that, we didn't get to see any of the prelims. They weren't on FS1. That's a concern. I hope moving forward that's not the case for these big Fox events. And again, looking forward on the Fox schedule, not the FS1 schedule, because the FS1 schedule is actually pretty great, but the Fox schedule. It's more of the same of what we just saw on Saturday. And I don't know if that cuts it. I don't know if that is meeting my bar and my standard of what I expect from PBC. It just isn't. They are the best league/promoter in the game, promotion in the game, and therefore they should put out the best product. Saturday wasn't it. But anyways, I'll be back sometime this week, maybe Wednesday, with Rob, and talk about Josh Warrington, Carl Frampton as well, break down whatever news of the boxing world out there. Also, it's not 100% official yet, but I may or may not be credentialed for UFC 232, which just got moved to LA, and I might be credentialed for ShareDot.com, so shout out to Anthony Walker. So this week might be really hectic in terms of scheduling, just to give you guys that forewarning. Smash that like button, share the show, subscribe, leave a comment below with what you thought about the show. Do you think Harrison won? Did you think Korobov won? Do you think the fights were controversial? Do you think it was a robbery? And do you think the PBC on Fox debut lived up to the hype? Like I said, Matt Tips and Hunter, have a Merry Christmas. Everyone in the UK, I know it's already Christmas out there. Salute to you guys and ladies. And have a great night. Peace.
Are you off your tits? Have you been smoking something?
Everybody's on steroids. The whole UFC, everybody.
It's bullshit.
Where is this Burger King?
You know, they're selling you all wolf tickets, people. You're eating them right up.
That's fucking illegal.
Who the fuck is that guy?
I said it last year. We're not here just to take part. We're here to take over.
Hey, pussy, are you still there?